Welcome to another episode of You Had Me a Cheese, where my partner Eclipse and myself, Venus, explore the many different aspects of the human experience. We are here with our selection of cheeses, and I have a glass of wine ready, so feel free to bring your favorite snack and join the party! Hi there, listener! I'm so glad you're here. For the next 40 odd minutes, we are going on a journey. We are going to talk about Eclipse's experience with discomfort, daily struggles, and chronic pain. We are going to dive deep into some of the potential reasons for the manifestation of pain, the connection between mental and physical distress. But also, we will go on a few tangents about family, religious upbringing, and what it is like to live in a constant survival mode. I hope you join us on this interesting yet challenging conversation. Eclipse, how are you feeling?
Tired and in pain, but that's basically my status quo.
Is there anything that could be done right now that could improve that for you?
I could probably get naked, but I'm too tired to do that as well. So I know that excites you, but I can't be fucked right now.
Are you overheating?
I'm not overheating, but I'm over being enclosed, and I'm over feeling the sports bra on my skin, and I'm over feeling somewhat restricted in these leggings.
I think a large audience of ours just connected with the statement of that they are tired in being enclosed and just want to be naked.
Yeah, you know, where I come from, there's a song about why can't we all just roam around naked?
Yeah, why can't we?
I mean, where we are at right now is frowned upon.
Fair. So to dive deep into this conversation, when would you say that you started noticing that you are having issues with chronic pain?
I would say that I started having chronic pain when I was 12. And I'm not sure how long before then I actually experienced it, but that's the number that solidified in my head. And since then, I basically have had chronic headaches. I don't have days where I don't have a headache. It's just a matter of how severe it is and how much it impacts me. I would say that I started having chronic pain when I was 12. It is possible that it started before then, but 12 years old is the age that solidified in my mind. I had chronic headaches, and in fact I still do. So I'm in my late 30s now, and I never have a day without a headache. The severity, the location, the impact, that changes, but it remains the same. In terms of I never have a day where I don't have a headache of some sorts. And after that, I started having chronic stomach aches when I was 16. And for a while, that was like the two things. I have headaches and I have stomach aches, and that was my norm. Like, I understand that for other people, having a headache is the exception.
Yeah.
And having a stomach ache is the exception. But for me, that was the status quo. And so with food, no matter what I ate, and actually no matter what I drank, I was always in some sort of discomfort. Like, when we think about pain, there are different ways of experiencing pain. There are different types of pain. I would probably say it's more of an ache. So it's like maybe a humming sensation of uncomfortableness. So yeah, 12 and 16, and so we still coexist inside my uncomfortable body.
And you as a 12-year-old, um, when you started noticing this lingering pain or lingering uncomfortableness, do you remember what you were thinking could have been causing it?
There was nothing that the doctors could figure out. I don't know if it's because they didn't look deep enough into what could have caused it.
Yeah.
I did, with the stomachache, for example, I did go through some tests and stuff like that. But I can't say that nothing came up, because this one thing did come up as positive, and then they treated it, but the stomachache remained. I don't think I knew what had caused it back then, and I don't think the doctors knew. And so it kind of became, well, that's just the reality. That's just how you experience life. In retrospect, it might sound a bit ironic, but that age in particular, it has some significance, because that's the age I started to think for myself. So yes, potentially the pain, the headaches might have been there prior, but it's also very possible that that's when it started. And we're not going to go into the tangent on why.
Sure.
But at 12 years old, that was the age that I started questioning everything. And I started putting a lot of effort into thinking about the things that were an absolute truth for others. So questions like, do I want to have kids? Do I want to join the military? Which is mandatory in the country that I come from, which we will address as Middle Earth. I started asking myself all of these questions. I think, realistically speaking, most 12-year-olds do not go through that process, or at least back in my day, they didn't go through that process. I was alone in that thinking world, in the questioning world. I was on my own, and I remember myself going back to my parents' house after the rest of my class had a very vibrant conversation about wanting to have kids. Bear in mind, these are 12-year-old girls. But they were absolutely certain that they wanted kids. And me going back to my parents' house on my own, sitting in my room and asking myself, is this something I want? And I think there is like an emotional trigger to the pain, potentially.
It's interesting you brought that up. I was thinking in my mind how emotions can bring up pain. Was there something at that age
of significance? And there was. And I think I've always been, it might sound a little weird, or maybe some people might relate to this, but I've always been a psychosomatic person. So even prior to this manifestation of pain when I was 12, I've always experienced my emotions through my body to a certain extent. And by that I mean, I remember being, how old would I have been? I would say that I was 10 at this point, so 2 years prior to the headaches marching into my life. And my school, which was horrible, had a long day on Tuesdays. We would always finish at 3:45, which is very long for a 10-year-old. I don't know what schools do today. I'm a dinosaur. And it wasn't fun. Let's put it this way. It wasn't fun. And I was dreading Tuesdays. There were other things in school which I clearly did not like, such as a lot of other kids. But most kids don't manifest this dread through their bodies, or at least maybe not to this extent. And so every Tuesday, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. My mom thought I was bluffing, but basically what would happen would be that my entire upper body would become tense, and I wouldn't be able to use my core muscles to get up and get out of bed and go to school. And it would only ease after it was too late to go to school. for that day. Of course, my mom thought I'm just a child being a brat. I was actually a very good child. I'll just tell you that. I was a really nice kid until I was 12. That's like the cutoff time. And that's the first time that she took me to a psychologist, I think. And I didn't really want to talk to the psychologist. That's for another story.
Yeah.
I was being a bit of a dick to her. But she did tell my mom that I wasn't bluffing and that the school was too big of a stressor and that she had to move me to a different school. Which she did.
Did moving to another school help?
I mean, I didn't have that experience again, but then there were other issues. Honestly, we could have a whole episode on me moving from one school to another and then dropping out. And
I think we're going to have to do that at some point.
At some point.
Yeah. Before we move on, just wanted to ask if talking to a psychologist at that time had a positive impact at all.
It got the job done because my mom did, in fact, listen to the psychologist, and it kind of reassured me that they understood I wasn't bluffing, and she did move me to a different school.
And so that meant you were in school on Tuesdays.
But I didn't need to stay in school until 3:45. Anyway, so it got the job done, and my mom did in fact move me to a different school, and we didn't need to study until 3:45. I don't remember until when we actually stayed in school.
But your mom was happy that you went to school on Tuesdays.
I didn't have that issue again. But then, 2 years later...
2 years later, when headaches started coming up...
I blame school, honestly, because what happened 2 years later? 2 years later was when we finished primary school. And that was when she wanted to put me back into a similar system to the system that I was in before. So just for context, I come from a religious family and I was in a religious school. And that's the school that had Tuesdays from hell. In order to move me to a different school, she had to move me to a non-religious school. And after 2 years in the non-religious school, my teacher told her that I don't fit in more words. Basically, I was struggling to adjust because I was used to different type of rules, I would say. And I wasn't like the other kids. And so I guess for my mom, she was doing the logical thing. And she was preparing to move me back to a religious school. But I didn't agree with that. And that was the first time in my life that I didn't agree with my parents.
Yeah. So you're dealing with these headaches. And did you tell your parents at the time that you were having this issue?
Pretty sure I did.
They took you to the doctor?
I honestly can't remember exactly, but I think they looked into it. My mom might be a person that I don't feel comfortable with or don't want to have in my life as much now. I may have my struggles with my mom these days or have had struggles with her for decades, but growing up, she was nothing short of a lioness. And what I mean by that is that she would do anything to fight for me. It ended at some point. She could not protect me from other things, but she fought for me to have help with learning disabilities, and she moved me schools, and she wrote all sorts of letters and stuff like that. So she may have made many mistakes in her life, but I know she tried. So I'm pretty sure she took me to see a doctor.
Yeah.
But I can't remember because I mostly remember if something actually happened. Like I remember that they did find something when I was 16.
So life goes on. You're now 16. The stomach ache is coming up after you're eating, after you're drinking. How long would you say it took before you noticed that this is a problem?
How long is a piece of string? I don't remember. It's just, it was there for a while. At some point, you're like, okay, I thought it would go away by now. It doesn't. It isn't going away. And I've been through like a few tests and stuff like that. And as I said, they picked something up, but then the treatment for it didn't really help. And so I stayed with that issue.
So being quite young and dealing with headaches and stomach aches is no easy feat for anybody.
Well, you see, I wish that was my problem when I was 16. I had bigger fish to fry. And so honestly, I just fucked the pain. I was worried about where I'm going to sleep that night. It's not really a situation where you can get the proper support and figure out everything.
Well, that's I was going to ask at this point, is your mom still a lioness?
No, she isn't. She's not, like, the lights are on and nobody's home. So I was left to fend for myself. That was basically it.
Let's focus on the pain side of things and move forward.
That's basically my life in a nutshell.
Oh, babe. You're gonna make me cry.
We can cry together.
We can. Life is going on. You're figuring out day-to-day situations. At some point, things settle down a bit, I would assume.
In terms of having stomach aches and headache?
No, in terms of living situation, figuring out where you're going to sleep for that night. And, this could be 5 years later, 10 years later. At which point do you think you were secure in a living situation to have noticed that you actually have been struggling with something? Like, when did it hit you that with pain? Like,
well, I knew I was living with pain.
Yeah. But you mentioned, you were not really focusing on more of a push through the pain.
I see what you're asking. You're asking at what point did you turn around and go like, now it's time to tackle this pain?
Not in that way. But sure, yeah, when...
Well, no, because I had other things to deal with. I started renting when I was 19.
Renting your own place.
It's how to define your own place, but flatting.
Okay, flatting, yep.
Renting a room in a flat, which honestly needs another episode just about that flat.
Mm-hmm. We'll get there one day.
Yeah. That's a doozy. But I started renting when I was 19, and then I needed to pay the bills. I needed to walk. So I all of a sudden was an adult, but I've been running for so long, and all of a sudden you're thrown into adulthood, and I feel like there are a lot of things that I should have been taught, and I wasn't taught.
That's an understatement of the century.
I feel attacked here, but I just think in general, many of us end up parenting or reparenting ourselves. And I was doing a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my focuses was learning how to become financially savvy.
Yeah.
How to make food that I can eat, because I didn't know how to cook food.
Very important.
Also the stuff like that. I was also trying to use some of the money to travel and do things that are fun, but I was in fact very, very frugal, because I guess, first of all, it's not that easy to make money, and second of all, money is a safety net, and I was petrified because I spent years not feeling safe. And so I just, we've already looked into this pain and nothing came out of it. So I was like, okay, that's just my reality. I drink water, I have a stomachache.
Yeah.
I eat food, I have a stomachache. How much of a stomachache depends on different factors, but I will just have a stomachache.
Yeah.
Period. I think I just accepted it. I think I just accepted that was my life.
I don't want to put food. I don't want to put food in your mouth, but
you always want to put food in my mouth.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, and like I'm just putting myself in the position, and it's like one of the ways to manage myself, I think, If I have a stomachache, it would be to sit down for a bit until I feel better. I'm just wondering, they could be oversimplified, but
You can't sit down every time you drink a glass of water.
no.
You just continue. I think the other thing to take into account here, and this is probably, again, something that we will talk about in another episode, is that my country of origin,
The Middle Earth.
yes, is very stressful. It's a country that is basically almost always under some sort of a threat. And so what I wasn't realizing back then, but I realized looking back, is that it's very normalized to just push through, because you always have to push through, because everything is stressful. And you just kind of like push yourself through life and knock everything in the process, but that's just how you do it. And things that shouldn't be an argument and shouldn't be a fight are a fight, but you just don't know anything else.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I think even though I had a place to stay, I never really processed what happened, because you always are on the move. You are always
moving forward.
No and let's
back.
Practically look at this and how do I solve this, and that's it. And back then I also did not know how to be vulnerable with other people, because I basically had to remove myself from a situation that wasn't healthy for me when I was 15. And my parents should have been the ones to protect me, and they didn't. And that kind of solidified for a few years that people are not to be trusted or relied on. That the only person I can trust and rely on is me.
Just to be let down by your parents to that level is tough. They're the only people you should be able to trust.
I think that it's more common than we think.
I think so, yeah.
The reality is that parents are humans.
Yeah.
Just like us.
100%.
And we all make mistakes. And I can look back and be forgiven and say, I know they did what they could. It wasn't what I needed.
Yeah.
But I don't think they could have done any better.
I think most people are trying to do their best. Just sometimes their best is not good enough.
Yep.
How are you feeling?
I'm still tired. Surprise, surprise. I'm still in pain. I think the whole concept of looking back and being forgiven and compassionate towards your parents, I've done it for so many years. I didn't hold those things against them, but at some point you have to call it as it is. And it's hard for me to admit that they failed me. It's not that kind of episode. Today we're talking about physical pain.
Yes.
Yay!
Oh my goodness. We've dived into a few
tangents.
Few threads, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's great. It's just there are so many things connected to us, how we shape ourselves in this world, or how the world shapes us. Everything is connected in some shape or form.
I think that's a part of the complexity, that it's not happening in a vacuum.
No.
And that's a part of these things being psychosomatic.
Yeah.
And there have been other situations in my life where I experienced things that were really debilitating. And I do believe that one way or another, it was all connected to stress. And so when we look into my 20s, like my mid to late 20s, I was such an active person. Like, honestly, I'm looking back at it, I don't fucking know how I did it. It's insanity, if you ask me. And I do and I don't want this life back. I think I don't want this life back, but I want the ability to have this life if I wanted.
Yeah.
And that's also a big thing for me, choice.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, it's not even about whether you would use that option. It's having that option to begin with.
Correct.
And what does it mean when I say it was insane? It was insanity. In my mid to late 20s, I had a full-time job and I was working 5 to 6 days a week, but I was also modeling on the side. And I would basically take any type of double shift or extra hours, or if other branches needed me, I would play branch bingo. Basically, I think
Amazing.
during my first month on the job, I think I already did all the branches. There were like 5 of them.
Amazing.
But obviously that wasn't enough. So I was modeling on the side. I had a few partners during these years, but most of them were fleeting rather than during other times of my life. I normally had like more serious relationships. I would go to the gym or the CrossFit box 3 to 4 times a week. I would see my mom and my dad separately each week. And I had a very active social life as well. So sometimes I would finish work at, I don't know, like 8 or 8:15 or something like that, and somebody would already be at my door at 8:20 because it took 5 minutes for me to walk from work home. And so there was no buffer.
So your timetable was full all the time, basically.
It was packed. I also was throwing dinner parties about fortnightly, and I would sometimes cook a whole day for that. Mostly bake, let's be honest. But yeah. So it was very active, and I wouldn't say I enjoyed the gym, but it was one of the things that brought me a sense of accomplishment, because working out is difficult for me. And that's another story why.
Even at that time, it was difficult.
Correct. For a different reason. But the fact that I was doing all of those things and I was always so active, and I always, got back home and I would do all the chores, and, it wasn't that an aspect of my life was lacking, My dishes were always done. My room was always tidy. I still, saw my friends all the time, and I had my casual flings, I guess, at that point, while still creating connections with other people that may have been deeper. And I was working out, and I was still seeing my parents. So it was somehow I managed to hold all these balls in the air, and I don't miss it because I now know that you can live another way, and you don't need to have this fast pace, never stopping for a minute type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
At that point in my life, I didn't understand that there could be anything different, and I thought this is what I need, because anytime that I would try and be elsewhere, or like stray from having such an active life, I would feel like I'm losing myself.
And that just meant not going to a party, or when you would take a moment for yourself, that would come up.
It was basically when I stayed outside of the city where I lived, which was a very fast-paced environment, let me tell you. Basically, we address it as the city that never sleeps. And so every time I would be staying out of the city for too long, anything that is coming close to a week probably, I think maybe a weekend is manageable, but a week is when I would feel like unsettled and uncomfortable and like I'm losing myself. And I remember staying with one of my partners at the time. That was in my early 20s, and I just felt like I'm losing myself. Like I couldn't stop. I had to keep going all the time.
Brings an interesting question. Do you remember at all if there was more pain when you slowed down?
It's a good question. I'm not sure there was that slowing down was associated with pain. Maybe with fatigue, but I never actually thought about it. I just kept going.
Yeah.
And it was in every aspect of my life. Like in my mid-20s, I had a partner that would snooze his alarm. I almost lost it on him because I was like, the alarm goes off. You get the fuck out of bed. I just didn't understand it. Because in my brain, it's just like, go.
Yeah.
You just go, go, go. There's no stop. I still don't believe in the idea of snoozing. I think it's, unless you give yourself another hour and a half, I think it's quite pointless. But I do understand a lot of people do it, so I'm sorry. I don't mean to attack you. Anyway. Up until my late 20s, I would say it was basically mostly the headaches and the stomach aches that I was living with.
So around this time, you decided to see places other than Middle Earth, and lifestyle changes usually come with moving.
Correct.
Did you notice a change with pain or yourself and how you managed pain?
I think it's always been just pushing through because that's the only thing I knew. My headaches were always basically a constant. But then when I would have a really stressful time for whatever reason, it wasn't uncommon for me to have a migraine and for it to completely debilitate me. What I noticed after I left Middle Earth, my origin country, and moved to Netherlands, which is where we're living now, what I noticed as the process of immigrating was taking longer and longer than expected and had different obstacles is that I started having chest pain. So that was like a new fun introduction to my life. And I basically just dismissed it as anxiety, and that's just what it is. And I remember I was driving back home with a friend. We went to an Airbnb for a night. And the entire drive home, which was like an hour, I just felt like there was a knife just like lodged in my chest. And again, that was just another thing to live through, to push through. I don't even think I went to the doctor about it. Because I was like, clearly this is psychosomatic. And they're just going to say there's nothing physical causing it.
Yeah, that would say nothing's wrong. Medically, you check out.
Medically speaking, I'm not having a heart attack, even though, some people do have heart attacks earlier in life. I was early 30s when I was experiencing more and more chest pain.
So you started gradually.
Yeah, and then it became something that was just another norm. So this was a little bit about my journey with pain. But we haven't really gotten to the point of talking about where we are at now. The only thing I can tell you really is that my life now is completely different than what I was used to. Probably back then, this was my worst nightmare. And on one hand, I miss having the energy and the choice and being able to do more. And on the other hand, I feel like I'm a lot more connected to myself, the people around me. I put a lot more effort into gauging where I'm at, what's right for me, what I need, listening to myself, which I don't think was a huge thing back then for me. I think I was doing it to the best of my ability back then. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, yes, I would like to be in a more able body, but I don't think I would ever want to go back to what it was, because without realizing it, I was just keeping myself stressed.
Yeah.
Granted, I believe that anybody who lives in Middle Earth has complex PTSD just by living there. So I'm not totally at fault, but I do think we need rest. And I do not think I was really allowing myself to have that rest.
So before we close, Do you want to say one thing that you're grateful for?
I'm grateful for being in a relationship with somebody who holds space for my needs, who cares for my needs, who wants to know what they are and how to meet them better, because that was not always the case. And I think that a lot of people intentionally or unintentionally dismiss our needs.
Yeah.
And that's just an unfortunate reality. That too many people living in relationships where they have stopped voicing their needs.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of times that they have been told verbally or through behavior that they are not important.
Or that they're too much.
Well, as we say, if I'm too much, go find less. So I'm grateful for you. Not really a surprise, is it?
No. But then again, I'm grateful for you as well.
Were you actually fishing?
No. I was genuinely asking. I'm grateful to have someone so close that I can be myself. I can share. I can be heard. And I think growth is very important. And sometimes we need to be patient with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we need to be patient with someone else. And I'm grateful that sometimes you're patient with me while I try and figure out what's happening with myself.
I mean, aren't we all trying to figure out what's happening with ourselves?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I think there's some people who don't want to know about themselves.
I see. Okay. I see. Okay. I thought you were about to say that you think some people just know themselves. And I'm like,
No, the total opposite.
okay, yeah,
They
now I agree with you.
They're so far that they don't want to know.
The blinders on.
Yep. Can of worms. Don't open it.
Head in the sand.
Head in the sand. Yeah.
Well, if you're that kind of person, you do you, but you probably want to turn off this podcast.
Yeah. However, if you are curious and would like to know more about Eclipse's experience with chronic pain, stay tuned for our next episode as we dive even deeper into this journey. We have reached the end of our episode and hope you have enjoyed your snack as well as our conversation. If you liked our podcast, we would truly love for you to leave a comment, rate our show, and share it with anyone who would benefit from our conversations. And if you didn't like our podcast, then don't worry about it.